Hello, guys. It is 4:53, and p.m. specifically. I kind of figured you probably know I'm not filming at 4 in the morning, but um, yeah. So I haven't done much today. Um, I don't know. I just enjoyed vibing, and it's Sunday. I just I don't know, didn't feel like doing much. So I think I just needed to relax. And then, in about an hour, we're going to go out. I think we're going to use the bus and we're going to go get, um, we're going to get some food. And then after food, we're going to go watch a movie, the new Spider-Man movie that's coming out. So that'll be fun. Aside from that, I, yeah, just kind of watched memes, like meme videos or dumb, stupid stuff that I normally don't watch. And it was really funny. So I'm just like, I don't know. Today was just one of those days where it just felt like doing that before leaving, and yeah, that was it. So I think we have a new guy that showed up. I interacted with him once. Seems nice so far. I feel bad that I just kind of shot into the bathroom and that was it. So um, but yeah, I what do I have to talk about today? Um, I think I want to talk about, I guess, discerning what actually gives you joy. And I know that sounds maybe like an easy question. You know, what do you enjoy? But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of nuance, and some things we think we enjoy are more addiction loops rather than pure enjoyment. And what I mean by that is, like, I'll use gotcha games as an example because I think that's a really easy one where I think most of us can agree that if you play a gotcha game and you spend a lot of money and you do dailies every day, like, you can maybe enjoy the process of, like, getting new characters or new items or whatever. But there's always some part of the experience, that loop that you get into, that isn't enjoyable. It may be the daily grind or the daily quests where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to log in for 2 hours in order to play this game so that I can get all of my dailies done. And then I got another hour of grinding if I want to, like, progress. And then, you end up spending like 3, 4 hours a day um, doing something that you mainly don't like so that you can get the payoff of when a new character comes out, you spend money and you get it. And I know I'm making it very simplistic. I played Uma Musume for, when it came out in the US, for, I don't know, like 6 months or something. And yeah, dude, like, it's really easy to get on that treadmill of doing something that isn't necessarily super fun because there's, like, this perceived payoff later. Um, and the perceived payoff is effectively you spending money, which is, you know, like, I'll say with, like, Uma Musume as an example, because I got really in the weeds on that game. Um, its actual grinding loop was pretty satisfying. But even with a satisfying grinding loop, if you break down the mechanics of what's actually going on, you're playing a slot machine every time you do a run to hope you run or to hope you get all of the skills associated with the parent you're trying to make. And so when you kind of go through this scenario of pull the slot machine every 20 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on how fast or slow you are at it, it's it sure is addicting, but is it actually on a moment to moment basis fun? Like, do you enjoy getting like completely screwed on RNG because you didn't get an encounter that you wanted? So you're kind of just like, well, I guess this run's dead. Or your Uma has some really bad race that like you're like, well, I can't do anything about it. I kind of need to do this race, and I'm gonna, it's gonna be a struggle. So it's like it's breaking it down. It never actually was fun in the traditional sense of fun. It was addicting. And so when you split off and you begin to realize a lot of the things we do are because we did them in the past and there's an addiction loop going on. So this is why I think there's a more nuanced take when it comes to deciding what is and isn't actually enjoyable and fulfilling for you. And also, on top of the addiction loop, there's also the sunk cost fallacy of, you spend $1,000 in a gotcha game. You're going to want to continue playing it because you collected all these people, your different waifus or your different characters that you enjoy playing with. Oh, I got this really cool setup, and it took like 6 months of grinding to get there, and I'm really happy with it. And then the company like makes a new set of content where your setup doesn't work at all. I'm looking at you, Raid Shadow Legends. I don't know. I used to play that a while ago, um, back in like 2019 or 2020. It's like COVID times. Um, I also played Wuthering Waves for a little bit too. So like and then before that there's a mobile gotcha game that really fucked me too. So I know the addiction loop when it comes to these mobile games. I haven't played every gotcha game, but like you know, once you've played a few, you kind of get a sense of like what the trying to get people addicted, trying to get people to be feeling that sunk cost fallacy as soon as possible. Then there's the FOMO of like, well, if you don't roll this character now, which of course, if you play free, they're going to make it so that it's impossible for you to get every free champion or every free character or every free waifu. And you're going to have to spend. And once you spend a little, then you're going to say, well, I've already spent a little, so I can spend a little more. And then that's the slippery slope to spending a ton of money. Um, Even to your detriment. Like, I remember the first gotcha game I ever played was this like summoner card game. I don't remember what it was called. I don't know if it was Summoner War. I don't think so. I think it was some other game, but this was back in like the early days of gotcha games. And man, I remember like when I was peak addiction, like seriously deciding on whether I'm going to buy food or whether I'm going to get another 10 pull. And it's like, when you're in that kind of situation, it's like you have to stop. You got to stop. Um, so this is where it's like, I focused on gotcha games, but there's a lot of these where there's a loop that you don't necessarily like, and then there's a perceived payoff in the future that maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but it kind of, because you're doing so much effort on what said thing, you might as well continue. Um, so how do you actually perceive what gives you joy and what is like meaningfully impactful for you internally? How do you figure that out? Well, I think first it is dissecting whether it is a loop or not that you're in. Are you in a loop that is doing, maybe a repetitive task, or it could be different tasks, but like things that you don't really enjoy for a perceived like happy outcome in the future? Doesn't mean that doing those things is wrong, but I think about like work. If you go to work 40 hours a week and you're doing a job that you hate, you're spending a lot of time doing something you hate. The perceived benefit is you get money, right? And sometimes our choices are really limited in the type of job we can have, and you feel kind of lucky that you even have a job sometimes. And then there's the perceived like power of like, your manager or your district manager or wherever you are on the chain. And just like in gotcha games, you can have this loop where it's like, well, I got a promotion 6 months ago, and there are other people that are worse out there than me, and so maybe I should hold on to my job because I don't know if I'm gonna get as good a deal, and maybe everyone else is really bad, so I guess I'm just gonna stick through it. And then every week you're trying to convince yourself to leave, and then you convince yourself to stay for one reason or another. Again, sunk cost fallacy. You're going up the chain, or you're getting promotions or whatever. And so I think the first thing you do before you start looking into like what do you actually have that comes, what generates joy for you and what is like fulfilling, um, it's first to actually figure out what isn't that you're doing consistently in your life. And the reason I say that is because it helps you to recognize the signs of this thing actually being an addiction or some sort of loop that you've put yourself in to get a good outcome, maybe, um, so on and so forth, right? So starting with that and kind of going through every aspect of your life. And this, it's not a quick process. You may only have enough mental energy after doing a slog of a workday. And so you're just doing like one thing that's super obvious. It's like, yeah, I fucking hate doing this. Well, why are you doing it still? Well, and then anything after the well is generally a coping, because you're trying to convince yourself that you should do something you hate because of some reason. Sometimes the reason feels really valid. Um, an example of this could be, Maybe, again, I'll use the job. You're working and the job is awful. There's all sorts of reasons why it could be awful. I'm not going to list, whatever it is, it's unique to you. But you hate the job, and it could be the best job in the world. If you hate it, you shouldn't do it. You could literally be the president or the prime minister or some leader, a YouTuber. The list goes on. Any job you can imagine, if you do not like it, it doesn't matter what anyone else says about the job and how good it is. You shouldn't be doing it. That's just like full stop. Now, how you get out of that job is important. You don't just sit down and say, "Well, I'm not going to do it anymore." And then you fuck yourself. You need to figure out steps to kind of get you to a job that you do enjoy, or to an income stream. Maybe you don't even need to do a traditional job. Maybe it could be some sort of income stream that you've come up with that fits more of like what you enjoy. Um, and there are a lot of those jobs out there. You just have to be like open to trying to find them. Um, and if there isn't a job, you can always try and make the job. But that's kind of like, again, I'm getting into the weeds on like finding the thing that you truly like doing, as opposed to like, diagnosing. Okay, so I diagnosed I don't like the job. What do we do with this information? Well, you take this piece of information and then you figure out, if I could wave my wand or my hand or a staff, or use your psychic powers, whatever it is, right? Warping reality, what was the first thing that came to your head as a job you would love to do every day? And it doesn't, you don't have to like judge yourself on whatever that is. It could be something as simple as, I would love to greet people at the door of a restaurant. It's not a glamorous job, but maybe you really enjoy seeing the people's faces light up when you greet them, holding the door out for them. And maybe that's like all you really want to do in the job, is like, this matters so much to you. That's like, okay, cool. Well, you found this potential thing that you're going to enjoy doing much more. How are you going to get from point A to point B? If you remember a few days ago, I was talking about, breaking stuff down. This is where you use this skill of breaking down steps to kind of figure out how to get from point A to point B. And you don't have to micromanage it, but break it down enough to where it's like, okay, well, how do I get into the service industry? Just figure out like what some baseline information that you can get about like being a server and greeting guests and sitting them at tables. Like, how do you get that job? What are the skills that you need in order to have that job? If you're not qualified, what do people do in order to get that job? And throughout this whole process, if you start feeling like maybe the job isn't for you, take a second to kind of think about like, okay, is it actually because it's the job? Or is it because maybe it's really hard to get there? Because oftentimes we'll kind of see that there's a bunch of steps to get to something, and we'll be like, yeah, but I don't know if I want to do all those steps to get there. It's like, okay, if that's the case, re-examining, is it actually something that you really, really want to do internally? And if the answer is yes, you won't necessarily, the steps to get there, if you see the steps to get there, you'll do it if you truly want to do the thing and you truly are like, you're like, yes, this is for me. So an example, if someone wants to be an author, but they find out that it's going to take like, 2 years of writing failed books in order to get that one book that is kind of successful enough to do it as a job. 10 times out of 10, if you truly like writing, you're going to just do it because that's just your passion. We don't have to convince ourselves to play our favorite video game. We don't have to convince ourselves to eat our favorite food. If, for an example, your favorite food is watermelon, and in order to get a watermelon, you have to walk 5 miles to go get that watermelon, but it's going to taste so good. It's going to be the best watermelon you've ever had. You will 100% walk that 5 miles to go get that watermelon and then bring it back. Because there's like a threshold where if there is no real barrier, like, okay, obviously if I say, well, you got to go halfway around the world to get it, that's a little more of an ask, right? I say a little. That's a big ask. So I'm also not saying if you want to, be an astronaut on and live on Mars, like, okay, like, why do you want to be there? So this goes into another door, which is we think we know what we want, but sometimes we don't actually know what we want until we actually start trying things. So the idea of being an astronaut on paper sounds great. Living there, having a whole separate life there, and, growing your own food and all of this stuff sounds cool. Seeing the stars, yada, yada, yada. Doing exploration. But the logistics of actually being an astronaut are way different than the fantasized version you have in your head. So it's important to recognize that if you're honest about what you want, it may not actually be the astronaut part of it. It may be the fact that what draws you to it is the solitude, or being able to create a new place to live that's your own. There could be all sorts of reasons why this thing is drawing you. And so that's where you kind of come to a scenario of, do I actually truly desire this thing? And not in the, I desire it from a materialistic standpoint, but in a, it will fulfill me internally. And you'll come to realize as you do more and more of this, a lot of the stuff you want is actually not the stuff itself. It's the perceived feelings you'll get from the stuff. And so when you break it all down, eventually you kind of get to some core things that you are yearning internally for. This is where you can finally start, okay, if I yearn for safety and security, well, you think that buying the house is going to make you feel safe and secure. So you get a mortgage for 50 years. But then you realize you're not actually safe and secure because at any point you could get foreclosed on if you don't pay your your mortgage bill. So really, you've put a responsibility on yourself without really actually getting the safety and security that you wanted. And again, this is where if you do internal work, you can kind of create your own safety and security inside. So you don't need external things to make you feel safe. You can be safe all the time inside. Same thing with love and all sorts of other things. But once we get past the like initial stages of like, oh, I have like a trauma around, feeling abandoned, or I have this or that or the other. Once we get past all of that, and once we've kind of internally felt how you can pour into yourself, then you can start looking at, okay, well, what is it that I truly actually feel called to do? So going back to the writing, maybe at first the writing was because you have a story you want to tell, and writing is a good medium to do it. You dig deeper and you're like, why do I want to tell this story? And then maybe it's, oh, because no one's ever really heard me. And so I want people to be able to read a story that reflects like me in some way. And then you dig deeper and you're like, okay, why do I feel that way? Because every time I've interacted with friends and family, they've kind of dismissed me. Okay, well, why is that happening? Because da 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 da. And you keep going down. You find the core thing, which is, again, like maybe it's just throughout your life, people have kind of dismissed you and dismissed your opinion. Maybe they've called you stupid or used another word to describe you in an unflattering way. And so you have this scenario and you heal it. You realize that you don't need validation from other people as long as you yourself are hearing you. And when you realize that, you're like, oh shit, like I can actually internally feel heard and seen by myself. I don't need another person to validate that seeing. And so you get there and then you look back at the writing and you're like, okay, do I still actually feel drawn to writing? And it's possible that you still do, but now it's for a different reason. It's, I want to create some sort of narrative and story that touches people in a deep way, where they feel emotions or whatever. And the joy of creation in this art form is the payoff for you. It doesn't necessarily matter if people read it. It is cool if they read it, and it's cool if you can like make it a job, right? But your main goal is actually to create from the heart and create something that hasn't been there before. This is when you've realized, okay, this is something that actually is like, it lights me up internally. So getting back to the job stuff, once you realize that it truly does light you up, this is when it's like, okay, you do the planning of like, how am I going to get to a point where I can do this and sustain myself? And maybe it's, you don't you don't quit your job right away. And instead, you start writing. And you write for a couple hours a day. You're tired, but you feel more and more fulfilled because it's like, okay, I'm doing the writing, which is what I wanted to do. And so you're doing this, and it's great, but you're not really making income right away. And you're like, damn, like, I kind of just hate this job that I'm in. And I want to, like, really step it up, and I want to, like, make some sort of money doing the thing I love. And so you start working a little bit harder on the writing, and you're writing more, and then you're burning yourself out, and you're like, it's not working. I don't understand. And it's because you're kind of focused on the outcome of like making money rather than the process of writing. And I know that sounds fucked up, but it's like when you, as long as you feel like you're lacking and you're like, oh, maybe my writing's not good enough, maybe there's not enough people that want to read it, all of these negative kind of thoughts, um, it puts you in that lack mindset of drawing in that kind of reinforced experience of people not reading it, people not vibing with it, whatever. And there's also like, there are things you can do to increase the visibility of said writing. And you may not necessarily know what to do with that. So you need to actually look into it and kind of become an expert at not just the writing, but the kind of sub things around the writing that allow you to kind of see, okay, maybe my initial writing was really rough, and so I needed to go back and do some edits, some revisions, whatever. And you learn and you progress, and as you kind of keep working at it, you realize that it never was about the outcome. It was about the experience you're having while you're writing. And as you kind of let go of what the end result is and instead focus on bringing out that truest essence of you and putting it on the page in whatever form it shows up in, your the people around you that are reading it and that are whatever, they'll sense that. You can sense when you are reading something that has like true heart in it. And all the small things that you were worried about aren't necessarily factored in when they're reading it. Okay, grammar might be slightly messed up sometimes, but you feel the heart, and so you enjoy and continue reading it. And also kind of making yourself available for potential blessings to kind of come in. Sometimes we close ourselves off because we don't feel like we're deserving. So it could be like you do all this writing and you're not putting it out there. So it's like, of course, no one's going to read it if it's on some random, maybe maybe you make a website, but you don't advertise the website ever. And so it's like, well, yeah, no one's going to be able to see it if no one knows it exists. So you can have the best story in the world, but if it doesn't reach anyone, like, yeah, of course they're not gonna be able to see it. Um, so it's like figuring out ways to kind of allow for the possibility of people finding you. So maybe you make a Patreon, or you go onto like Royal Road or some other like website that does the self-publishing thing, or maybe you do like an Amazon thing. Maybe you decide, you know what, I think my story is worth reading. I'm actually going to learn how to just do self audible books where you do it yourself. And so it's like there are so many ways of like just expanding the possibilities. And as you're doing it, it's kind of like there will be a point where inevitably things will kind of show up for you. Maybe someone finds it randomly in the sea of books, and they read it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this book is so good! I need to tell my friend." And then that starts the chain of a bunch of people talking about it and reading it, and then maybe it starts popping up in forums, and suddenly there was a post on Reddit that like blew up because someone was talking about how good it was on like r slash you know progression fantasy. And suddenly you get this scenario of like, now your book is known and people are seeing its worth and they're super excited to read more. And because you set up the Patreon, you didn't expect really anything, but you're kind of opening the idea for it to exist. Boom, suddenly you have 1,000 patrons on Patreon. Now you can quit your job. Congratulations. And it just happens where it's like you immersed yourself in the process and you didn't focus on the outcome. And when you do that, things will happen and change the way everything looks. Because you're already fulfilled by just writing the thing, and anything else is kind of a bonus. Now, I talked about job, which is probably the hardest thing to kind of do this with, because it's like, there's a lot out there that kind of tries to force us to do the 40-hour work week, or to work a certain way, or trying to limit income streams, whatever it is, right? But it is possible. You just have to allow yourself to be open to the idea that it's possible. And you have to really, put your heart into the thing that you love doing, which isn't going to be hard for you because you love doing it. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling cycle of enjoyment that you're having, as opposed to an addiction cycle, or a cycle where you're hating doing it, again, like with the job stuff, but you kind of have to because you need money. And so imagine a scenario now. I just talked about doing this for one thing. Imagine taking your life and crafting 10 things that you love doing and having them in your life in a consistent way. Imagine how much better your life is going to turn out when you always have things to look forward to every single day. This is why following your joy and kind of leading with your, being genuine and just doing your best and not worrying about what the outcome is going to look like This is where you start to cultivate this mindset of, I can do whatever I want. It may not be the best, you know, an example. This person may not write the best book ever, but it doesn't mean they're going to not write a book at all. It just means they're going to write a book that maybe appeals to, 10,000 people instead of a million people. Can you make a living off of appealing to 10,000 people? You sure as hell can. Especially if they're really diehard for whatever it is that you do. Look at streamers and how, like, if a streamer has like 5,000 concurrent, you know, watchers, that's a fuckload of people watching the stream. And they're considered really successful at like 5,000. Even at 1,000 people, you still can make a living doing it. Is it going to be glamorous? Probably not. But like, you know, you don't realize how low the bar actually is for the amount of people that can sustain and support things that you do. And people are always looking for that genuineness. They can smell from a mile away someone who's being fake. And some people are just like, I don't care if it's fake. It's still, I still enjoy the delusion of it. And that's fine. But there are other people who are looking for real, like, experiences. And I'm not saying the fake people are like fake experiences. I'm more talking about like they're looking for this genuineness from internally and passion. And you can feel the passion and the care. And generally speaking, people who are passionate tend to be better at the thing that they're passionate about because they think about all the little details. If you're just being performative, you may not understand all the nuances that make certain things important or relevant. And so you could totally skip over those like the foundational basic stuff. And then, yeah, it gets turned into a scenario where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing a thing and it's not actually like, I don't actually care about it, and you're two-faced, and maybe you have initial success, but then people start realizing like, okay, this person isn't actually being genuine, and it's a whole thing, right? Eventually it all just comes up to the surface in one way or another. In both scenarios, whether you're genuine or whether you're trying to kind of be performative. So why not just be genuine and do the thing that you genuinely like enjoy doing for the sake of it, not because you're getting some benefit out of it. Because the benefit will come when you're doing the thing. But people don't understand that that's how it works. So this is why, getting back to it, when you are looking at the things that light you up and the things that fill you with joy, it's important to be nuanced with it, to figure out where it actually stands and to go through the process. Because once you do, it's not like, if suddenly one day the writer who has been passionate for 20 years about writing suddenly decides not to write because they don't feel the passion anymore, but they feel the passion for painting. Okay, maybe now they're going to be a painter. Like, or they could be both. Maybe they could still do writing and kind of take a break and do some painting and see if the writing comes back with the painting. Because maybe sometimes you need a break from the thing you love to remember why you love it. So, it's important. And if you think about it, if you could do like in a single day, if you could do 10 things that you love throughout that day, that's like a majority of your day. Wouldn't that be awesome to just be able to do things that you love consistently? Who wouldn't want to do that? It's usually people who don't think that they deserve it, or, think that it's impossible. It's not. It's not impossible. It's just hard. You got to do a lot of self work. You got to do a lot of introspection, figuring out, like, you know, why it is that you want to do the thing, healing yourself. It's not super glamorous, but the outcome kind of speaks for itself later. It's like you're investing in yourself. You invest in all sorts of other things. Why not invest in yourself? Because the more you invest in yourself, the more returns you'll get later. Think about it like compound interest. If you go to school and you learn something, it could help you. Maybe it won't. But that's something you took the time and invested in yourself. Same thing with, like, it doesn't have to be school. It can literally be like, I decided to go and buy a bunch of lumber and learn how to be a carpenter solo because I want to make really cute birdhouses. And your birdhouses at first are really bad. And you're like, oh my gosh. But then over time, you invest and you learn how to do this woodworking skill, and you start making birdhouses, and you're like, you know, I like making birdhouses, but it really isn't actually calling to me. Did you waste your time? No, you didn't. Because now you know how to do some basic woodworking. That's a really handy thing to know how to do. That's investing in yourself. And you can do that about anything. So, it's always better to invest in yourself when you can. I'm not saying you don't have to go crazy and do it every single day forever, and you invest 24/7 and you take no time to do anything else. Like, I'm not saying that. There's balance, but kind of self-improvement at its base is about investing. You're investing in healing. You're investing in finally facing the fears that you've ran away from for however long they've been. It could be finally confronting that boss who treats you like shit for 10 years. Whatever it is, right? Um, because you do, at the end of the day, deserve to have a fulfilling life. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have joy every day. And the people, including yourself, that say otherwise, they're wrong. So don't let them dictate how your life's going to go. Do you want to live in a world where you're not happy? No. So, this is where you need to take a stand for yourself and make sure that you're doing things that will bring you joy. And it doesn't matter what the outcome will look like as long as you're doing the thing that makes you joyful. This is why you need to follow your passion or passions, because we all have multiple passions. And there's no stupid passion. I think that's important too. Like, if you really like worms, so what? If you want to have little, like, if you want to watch worms wiggle in the earth, maybe that's really important. And, like, there's got to be someone who is like a worm watcher that, like, turns into a career where they, like, figure out a very special, like, thing of topsoil, where they've figured out the best way to make worms, like, create this awesome topsoil or whatever it is, right? Could be, something totally different, but you get my idea. um so yeah, I think, take some time. You don't have to, like, do it all at once, but take some time and really sit with yourself and try and figure out, like, what actually lights you up inside. Not for the thing that you may get later, but the thing in that moment. What is the thing in the moment that you're lighting up because of? And then figure out how to do it consistently. Doesn't mean you have to completely rearrange your life. It can be something as simple as just doing it 30 or 40 minutes a day. And then imagine, like, you doing something you enjoy 30 or 40 minutes a day. Well, if you're starting at zero, that's a huge increase, right? Now you have something to look forward to every day. What about two things? Watch out. You might start getting happy. We don't want that, right? So, yeah. Um, think about it. Like, it seriously, like, and I'll say, for the people who have this kind of more, like, they've gone further down the path on this, and maybe they already have a couple things that they're, like, really happy with, you know, why stop there? And if you are someone who is completely happy with your life in all aspects, congratulations. Now, try new things and see if maybe there's something else out there that makes you even happier. You think you finished the track, but maybe you haven't even found the thing that makes you the happiest. You don't know unless you're trying new stuff. So, anyway, I gotta go in like 10-15 minutes. So, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna talk for the rest of the day with you guys. So I guess this is good night, or see you tomorrow. Um, so yeah, hope this helps. Have a good day. Good night.